The heavy oak door of Murphy's bar groaned on its hinges as it swung open, letting in a gust of cool San Diego evening air that carried the salt tang of the nearby Pacific. The sound cut through the Friday night cacophony of clinking glasses, raucous laughter, and the classic rock bleeding from speakers that had seen better days. A small figure stood silhouetted in the doorway for a moment before stepping inside, the yellow overhead lights revealing a woman in a Navy uniform that had clearly seen years of service. The fabric was faded at the edges, the collar worn soft from countless washings, and the ribbons above the left breast pocket were arranged with military precision despite their age. She moved with a slight limp, favoring her right leg as she navigated between the crowded tables toward the bar. Her eyes, a pale brown that seemed almost amber in the dim lighting, swept across the room in a practiced pattern. Exits first, blind corners second, potential threats third. It was a scan that took less than 3 seconds, but cataloged every detail, from the pool table in the back corner, where 2 contractors were arguing over a scratch, to the emergency exit partially blocked by stacked beer kegs, to the group of young men in the booth near the window. "Yo, check this out!" Jake Morrison's voice boomed across the bar as he slammed his beer bottle down on the scarred wooden table. At 6 feet 2 inches and 230 pounds of muscle earned through years of brutal training, Jake commanded attention whether he wanted it or not. His beard was trimmed to regulation length, his arms covered in the kind of functional muscle that came from carrying 100-pound packs through desert sand, and the fresh seal trident tattoo on his forearm still had that slight sheen of a recent ink job. "Looks like we got ourselves another case of stolen valor walking through that door." The woman didn't react to his words, though her path to the bar never wavered. She pulled out a worn leather stool at the bar end, away from the main cluster of patrons, and settled onto it with the careful movement of someone nursing old injuries. The bartender, Sam, a grizzled Vietnam veteran with arms covered in fading tattoos from a different war, approached with the automatic hospitality of someone who'd been pouring drinks for 40 years. "What'll it be?" Sam asked, his voice neutral but his eyes taking in the uniform with the assessment of someone who knew what real service looked like. The woman held up 2 fingers and pointed to the bourbon shelf, specifically at the bottle of Eagle Rare tucked between the Jack Daniels and the Maker's Mark. No words, just the gesture, economical and clear. "Hey, lady!" Rodriguez, the youngest of the group at 23, and eager to prove himself worthy of the trident he'd earned just 6 weeks ago, pushed himself up from the booth. His dark hair was still growing out from the buzz cut of buds, and his movements had that particular combination of aggression and insecurity that marked the newly qualified. "You deaf or something? My boy Jake here asked you a question. What makes you think you can wear that uniform?" The woman accepted her bourbon from Sam with a slight nod of thanks, lifting the glass to her lips with steady hands. Her fingers were thin, almost delicate-looking, but the way she held the glass, firm, controlled, with her index finger extended slightly along the side, suggested years of muscle memory. She took a measured sip, her eyes never leaving the amber liquid. Peterson, the technical specialist of the group with his laptop always within reach, stood up next. Unlike Jake's pure physical presence, Peterson carried himself with the intellectual arrogance of someone who'd memorized every manual, every protocol, every regulation. His blonde hair was longer than the others, taking full advantage of the relaxed grooming standards for special operations, and his blue eyes held the cold calculation of someone who saw the world in terms of data points and probabilities. "You know," Peterson said, moving closer with his phone already out, "impersonating military personnel is a federal crime, Title 18, Section 702 of the United States Code. You could get up to 6 months in prison for this little charade." Chen, ever the social media opportunist with his Instagram account, boasting 50,000 followers of authentic military life, had his phone up and recording. The ring light attachment cast an artificial glow as he narrated for his audience. "Yo, what's up everyone? We got a live one here at Murphy's. Some lady trying to play dress up in a Navy uniform. You know we don't tolerate that disrespect to our brothers and sisters who actually served." Thompson, the last of the group to stand, was perhaps the most dangerous. While the others were driven by youth and aggression, Thompson at 28 had just enough experience to be truly cynical. His brown eyes held no humor, only a cold assessment as he positioned himself between the woman and the door. "Ma'am, I'm going to give you one chance to explain yourself before this gets unpleasant. Where did you get that uniform?" 53 people filled Murphy's bar that Friday night. The two contractors at the pool table had stopped their game to watch. A table of 4 Marine wives on their monthly girls' night out had their phones discreetly recording. 3 off-duty base personnel sat at the bar, close enough to hear every word. In the far corner booth, partially hidden by shadows, Master Chief Williams sat alone with his whiskey, his weathered face showing the first signs of concern as he watched the scene unfold. 20 years of service, 15 of them with the SEALs, had taught him to read situations, and something about this one wasn't sitting right. The woman finally turned on her stool, facing the 5 young SEALs with an expression of absolute calm. Her face was unremarkable at first glance, mid-40s perhaps, with crow's feet at the corners of her eyes and lines around her mouth that suggested she'd smiled more in her life than frowned. Her hair, dark brown shot through with premature silver, was pulled back in a regulation bun that exposed a neck marked with what looked like old burn scars, the kind that came from being too close to an explosion. She set down her bourbon glass with deliberate precision, the base touching the bar without a sound. When she reached into her pocket, all 5 men tensed, their bodies automatically shifting into combat readiness. But all she pulled out was a battered leather wallet, from which she extracted a driver's license. She slid it across the bar toward Jake without a word. Jake picked it up, examining it with the thoroughness of someone looking for an excuse. "Sarah Mitchell," he read aloud. "Fort Collins, Colorado. This supposed to mean something to us?" He flicked the license back at her with casual contempt. It landed in her bourbon, splashing the expensive liquor across the bar. If you're a veteran or know someone who served, hit that subscribe button right now. This story isn't just entertainment. It's about the respect every service member deserves, regardless of how they look. Your subscription helps us share more stories that honor our military heroes. Click subscribe and the bell icon, because what happens next will change everything you thought you knew about judging by appearances. Sam moved to clean up the spilled bourbon, but the woman raised a hand slightly, stopping him. She picked up the soaked license, shook it off, and placed it carefully back in her wallet. Then she did something that made Master Chief Williams lean forward in his corner booth. She took the bar napkin and folded it into a perfect square with 4 precise creases, a movement so automatic it was clearly unconscious, the kind of thing drilled into someone through years of military service. "Look at that," Rodriguez laughed, pointing at her hands. "She's playing origami with the napkin, trying to convince us she's military with arts and crafts." But Peterson had noticed something else. "Those calluses," he said quietly, his analytical mind processing the details. "Rodriguez, look at her hands. Those aren't from folding napkins." The woman's hands did indeed tell a story. The web between her thumb and forefinger on her right hand bore the distinctive callus of someone who had spent thousands of hours gripping a pistol. Her left hand showed the marks of rifle slings, and both palms had the particular pattern of scarring that came from fast rope operations, when the heat of rapid descent burned through even the best gloves. Jake wasn't interested in Peterson's observations. The combination of alcohol, youth, and peer pressure had locked him into a course of action. "Listen here, lady. I don't care what sob story you've got or what YouTube video you watched to learn how to fold a napkin. You're disrespecting every real sailor, every real soldier who earned the right to wear that uniform. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to take it off, right here, right now, and apologize to everyone in this bar for your disrespect." The bar had gone progressively quieter as Jake spoke, conversations dying out as more people turned to watch the confrontation. The jukebox had fallen silent between songs, and even the television above the bar seemed muted, though no one had touched the remote. "Jake," Sam interjected, his voice carrying the authority of age if not rank, "maybe we should all just calm down. Lady's not hurting anyone, just having a quiet drink." "Stay out of this, old man," Thompson said without taking his eyes off the woman. "This is about respect, something your generation seems to have forgotten." Master Chief Williams' jaw tightened at that comment, but he remained seated, watching. The woman still hadn't spoken a word, but her posture had shifted slightly. To the untrained eye, she looked the same, small, unassuming, perhaps slightly tense. But Williams recognized the subtle changes. Her weight had transferred to the balls of her feet, her shoulders had dropped and centered, and her breathing had shifted to the deep, controlled rhythm of someone preparing for action. Rodriguez decided to escalate with what he thought would be an easy win. "You know what? If you're really military, prove it. Give me 20 push-ups right now, Any real sailor can knock out 20 without breaking a sweat. The woman tilted her head slightly, the first real reaction she'd shown to their harassment. She looked at Rodriguez with those pale brown eyes, and something in her gaze made him unconsciously take a half step back. Then, moving with deliberate slowness, she slid off the bar stool and walked to the center of the open floor area. The crowd parted to give her space, phones coming out in anticipation of either humiliation or vindication. She stood there for a moment, looking at the floor as if measuring something, then dropped into a perfect push-up position. Her form was textbook, back straight, core engaged, hands positioned exactly shoulder-width apart. But instead of using both arms, she lifted her left hand and placed it behind her back. The one-armed push-ups that followed were not the sloppy partial movements of someone showing off at a gym. These were controlled, precise, mechanical in their perfection. She went down until her chest was an inch from the floor, held for a half second, then pushed back up with no tremor, no strain visible in her movements. 1, 2, 3. The count continued in absolute silence, except for the soft exhale of her breath with each repetition. At 15, she switched arms without standing up, simply shifting her weight and placing her right hand behind her back. The left-armed push-ups were identical to the right, each one a demonstration of strength that seemed impossible from someone of her slight build. 20, 21, 22. At 25, she stopped, not from exhaustion, but simply because she'd made her point. She stood up with fluid grace, not even breathing hard, and walked back to her bar stool. As she passed Rodriguez, she paused for just a moment, close enough that only he could hear her whisper. "Buds, Class 198. Ring a bell?" Rodriguez's face went pale. Class 198 was legendary in SEAL training history, known for having the highest attrition rate ever recorded. Only 11 men had graduated from a starting class of 140. But what made his blood run cold was that she'd said it at all. Class numbers weren't public knowledge, especially not the specific details that she'd just implied she knew. The woman returned to her seat and picked up her bourbon, taking another measured sip as if nothing had happened. The bar slowly came back to life, conversations resuming in hushed tones as people processed what they'd just witnessed. Master Chief Williams pulled out his phone and began typing a discreet query into a military database he still had access to. The search parameters were simple: female, Navy Special Operations, Class 198. The phone screen went black for a moment, then displayed a single line of text: classification level, eyes only, access denied. Peterson had seen the woman whisper something to Rodriguez and noticed his teammate's reaction. "What did she say to you?" "Nothing," Rodriguez lied, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Just nothing." Jake, frustrated by the shift in momentum, decided to take a different approach. "All right, so you can do some push-ups. Big deal. Any CrossFit junkie can do that. Let's see if you actually know anything about the Navy. Peterson, quiz her." Peterson, always ready to show off his encyclopedic knowledge, pulled up a chair directly in front of the woman. "Fine. Let's start easy. What are the 3 phases of Bud's training?" The woman set down her glass and looked at Peterson with those unsettling amber eyes. When she spoke, her voice was low, controlled, with a slight rasp that suggested old throat damage. Phase 1. Basic conditioning, 7 weeks. Focus on physical training, water competency, mental toughness. Week 4 is Hell Week. 5 days, 5 nights, 200 miles of running. Physical training 20 hours per day. Maximum 4 hours sleep total. She paused to take another sip of bourbon, then continued. Phase 2. Combat diving, 7 weeks. Focus on underwater skills, combat scuba, underwater navigation. Phase 3. Land warfare, 7 weeks. Weapons, demolitions, reconnaissance, basic field medicine. Would you like me to detail the specific evolution requirements for each phase? Or should I describe the psychological evaluation protocols they added after the training accidents in 2009? The last part made Peterson's eyes widen. The psychological evaluation protocols were internal changes, not publicized, implemented after a series of training deaths that had been kept out of the media. No one outside the special operations community should know about them. Chen, still recording, zoomed in on the woman's face. Through his camera screen, he noticed something else, a pattern of scars along her jawline, partially hidden by makeup, that looked suspiciously like shrapnel wounds. The kind of wounds that came from being inside a vehicle when an IED went off. Thompson moved closer, his skepticism morphing into something more aggressive. Anyone can memorize facts from Wikipedia. Doesn't mean anything. If you're really Navy, really special operations, you'd know the hand signals. Jake, test her. Jake stood directly in front of the woman and made a series of rapid hand signals, the kind used for silent communication during operations. Rally point, enemy contact, cover me, extract immediately. His hands moved fast, deliberately trying to confuse her, but her responses were automatic, unconscious. Her left hand twitched into the countersign for acknowledged after each signal, her muscle memory betraying years of training before she could stop herself. After Jake's last signal, a complex combination that meant explosive breach, stack left, third man has point. Her right hand moved into position to check an imaginary rifle's safety, another unconscious response drilled into special operators through thousands of repetitions. Master Chief Williams stood up from his booth. He'd seen enough to know that something was very wrong with this picture, but not in the way the young SEALs thought. He'd been in long enough to recognize the patterns, the little things that couldn't be faked, the way she'd checked the exits when she walked in, the way she sat with her back to the wall but angled to see the door, the way her hands never strayed far from center line, always ready to react. This wasn't some stolen valor case. This was something else entirely. The bar had filled with tension thick enough to cut. Several patrons had left, sensing violence in the air, but more had stayed, drawn by the morbid curiosity that made people slow down at accident scenes. The two contractors had abandoned their pool game entirely, one of them holding his cue stick a little too tightly. The Marine wives were no longer pretending not to watch, their phones openly recording what they sensed was about to become a viral moment. Sam the bartender had quietly moved the bottles from the bar top, clearing the space of potential weapons. He'd seen enough bar fights to know when one was about to start, and this had all the warning signs. But something about the woman's calm made him think this wouldn't be a typical brawl. Jake, frustrated by her continued silence and the growing doubt among his teammates, made a decision that would change everything. He reached out and grabbed the woman's collar, pulling her partially off the stool. "I said take off the uniform. Now!" Master Chief Williams stood up, glancing toward the woman at the bar. His phone screen still showed the classified access denial, but he'd seen another piece of information before it locked him out. A single word that had made his blood run cold. Active. The woman didn't resist Jake's grip. Instead, she looked up at him with those amber eyes and spoke in that same low, controlled voice. "Young man, you're about to make a significant tactical error. I suggest you release me and return to your seat." "Or what?" Jake laughed, his grip tightening. "You'll report me to your imaginary commanding officer?" "No," she replied calmly. "I'll put you on the ground in 3.7 seconds, and your career will be over before the bourbon in my glass stops rippling." Rodriguez laughed nervously. 3.7 seconds? That's pretty specific, Grandma. The woman's eyes never left Jake's. "That's how long it took me to clear a room of 5 hostiles in Kandahar. Of course, they were actually trained fighters, not just boys playing soldier in a bar." Thompson had heard enough. He moved in from the woman's left side while Chen circled to her right, his phone still recording. Peterson stayed back, his analytical mind suddenly screaming warnings that his ego was trying to ignore. Rodriguez hesitated, caught between loyalty to his teammates and a growing sense that they were making a terrible mistake. Jake's face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. "You just threatened a United States Navy SEAL. That's assault. Thompson, you're a witness. Chen, you got it on video. This crazy lady just threatened me." "Actually," the woman said, her voice never rising above that controlled rasp, "I stated a tactical assessment. The threat would be if I told you that your stance is too wide, making you vulnerable to a sweep. That your grip on my collar leaves your elbow exposed for a joint lock. That Thompson is favoring his left knee from an old training injury, limiting his mobility. That Chen is holding his phone with both hands, making him effectively useless in a fight. That Rodriguez is the only actual threat because he's still thinking instead of just reacting. And that Peterson is smart enough to know this is about to go very badly for all of you." She paused, then added almost conversationally, "But I wouldn't say any of that, because that would be a threat." "Still watching? Good. The tension is building, and you can feel something big coming. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message about respect and hidden strength. Every share helps us reach more people with these powerful stories. Hit that share button now. Trust me, you'll want to discuss what's about to happen." The Master Chief glanced at his military-grade smartwatch, its sapphire crystal face glowing with tactical data, heart rate zones, GPS coordinates, and encrypted message alerts. These new tactical timepieces were revolutionizing field operations, providing real-time biometric monitoring and secure communications in a device that looked like a regular watch. Medical-grade sensors could detect stress indicators, dehydration, even early signs of trauma, technology that would have saved lives in Afghanistan. The watch showed an incoming encrypted message, but Williams ignored it, his attention fixed on the scene unfolding at the bar. Jake's grip on the woman's collar tightened further, pulling her almost completely off the stool now. "You think you're tough? Some kind of badass because you can do a few one-armed push-ups and memorize some Wikipedia articles? Let me tell you something, lady. I've been through Hell Week. I've been through SEER training. I've done things and seen things that would make you wet yourself. So, don't you dare sit there and try to intimidate me with your calm voice and your creepy stare." The woman sighed, a sound that carried more disappointment than fear. "Mr. Morrison, yes, I know your name. It's on your credit card on the bar. You graduated buds 6 weeks ago. Your Hell Week was in February. Unseasonably warm this year. Water temperature never dropped below 58 degrees. You rang out twice but were rolled back for medical reasons. Stress fractures in your left tibia. Your SEER training was the basic course, not the advanced program. You've never been deployed, never been in combat, never had to make the choice between your life and your mission." Jake's face went white. Everything she'd said was accurate, details that weren't in any public record. Rodriguez took a step back, his instincts finally overriding his loyalty. Peterson's fingers flew over his laptop keyboard, running searches that kept coming back with the same result. Classified, classified, classified. "How could you possibly know that?" Jake demanded, his grip loosening slightly in his shock. "The same way I know that Master Chief Williams in the corner booth is running my prints through JSOC database right now and getting locked out," the woman replied. "The same way I know that 3 of the patrons who left were actually base security doing their usual Friday night rounds. The same way I know that the bartender Sam has a Remington 870 under the bar, chamber empty, but shells loaded, because he's too responsible to keep one in the pipe, but experienced enough to know he might need it." Sam's hand had indeed drifted toward the shotgun, though he hadn't realized it until she mentioned it. Thompson, trying to regain control of the situation, pulled out his phone. "I'm calling base security. This has gone far enough. They're already on their way," the woman said calmly. "The silent alarm was triggered 4 minutes ago when Sam pressed the button under the register. Standard response time is 7 minutes. They'll be here in approximately 3 more. Everyone turned to look at Sam, who nodded slowly. He had indeed hit the silent alarm, though he had done it so discreetly that no one had noticed. Chen, still recording, decided to try a different approach. "Look, lady, whoever you are, this is all being live-streamed. I've got 12,000 viewers right now. If you're some kind of undercover cop or federal agent or whatever, you just blew your cover. So maybe we should all just calm down before this gets worse." The woman turned her head slightly around to look at Chen, and for the first time, a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Mr. Chen, your live stream ended 3 minutes ago when the cell tower prioritization protocol kicked in. Check your phone." Chen looked at his screen and swore. The live stream had indeed died, showing only an error message about network connectivity despite having full bars. "That's not possible," Peterson said, his laptop showing the same connectivity issues. "You can't just shut down civilian communications without—" He trailed off, his face going pale as the implications hit him. "Without authorization from someone very high up the chain of command," the woman finished for him. "Someone with the authority to invoke emergency protocols. Someone like, say, a flag officer." Jake's hand released her collar as if it had suddenly become electrified. "You're lying. There's no way you're a flag officer. Women can't even be SEALs, much less admirals." The woman straightened her uniform with practiced efficiency, smoothing out the wrinkles Jake had created. "Mr. Morrison, the first female Navy SEAL completed training in classified circumstances in 2018. The program was kept black for operational security. As for female admirals, there have been several, though I admit none with my particular background." Rodriguez's phone buzzed with an alert from his investment app. His military retirement portfolio had gained another 12% this quarter. These new robo-advisors specifically designed for military personnel understood deployment schedules, combat pay variations, and TSP optimization strategies. The algorithm automatically rebalanced during market volatility, protecting the nest eggs of those who protected the nation, offering insurance against market downturns while maximizing tax-advantage growth. But Rodriguez barely glanced at it, his attention fixed on the woman who was systematically destroying everything they thought they knew. Master Chief Williams had given up on the database and was now making a phone call, speaking quietly but urgently into his phone. His face had gone from concern to shocked to something approaching awe as whoever was on the other end spoke. Jake, his ego in full retreat but his pride not allowing him to back down completely, made one last attempt. Even if you are military, even if you are some kind of officer, you're out of uniform. That hair is too long, you're wearing jewelry, and I can see makeup. So, you're still in violation of regulations. The woman reached up and removed what they'd thought were earrings, revealing them to be high-tech hearing aids. Tinnitus from too many breaches without proper ear protection. The makeup covers scarring from an IED that took out our convoy in Helmand Province. And the hair. She reached up and pulled out what looked like hairpins, but which Peterson recognized with a shock as lockpicks. Sometimes a woman needs to keep certain tools handy. Thompson had backed away now, his phone forgotten in his hand. Chen's bravado had completely evaporated, leaving him looking very young and very scared. Peterson closed his laptop, his analytical mind having finally processed all the data points into a conclusion that terrified him. Only Jake remained standing close to the woman, though his aggressive posture had been replaced by something more defensive. If you're really who you're implying you are, prove it. Show us some ID. Real ID, not some driver's license. The woman reached into her pocket again, but this time she pulled out something that made Master Chief Williams actually drop his phone. It was a challenge coin, but not just any challenge coin. The front showed the seal trident, but the back had something none of them had ever seen before. A ghost overlaid on the number 7, surrounded by text in a language that might have been Arabic or Pashto or Dari. Williams found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. Ghost 7. You're Ghost 7. The woman pocketed the coin and picked up her bourbon again. That's a name I haven't heard spoken aloud in quite some time, Master Chief. Someone want to tell us what the hell Ghost 7 is? Rodriguez asked, though his voice had lost all of its earlier bravado. Williams stood up and walked over, his movements showing the careful respect of someone approaching a dangerous animal. Ghost 7 isn't a what, it's a who. The only SEAL operator to complete 37 consecutive high-value target missions without a single friendly casualty. The officer who planned the raid that everyone thinks was impossible. The one who... He stopped, looking at the woman for permission to continue. She shook her head slightly. That's still classified, Master Chief, and will remain so. Peterson, his curiosity overriding his fear, asked, But why are you here, in a bar in San Diego, dressed like that? For the first time since she had entered the bar, the woman looked tired. The weight of years seemed to settle on her shoulders as she turned to face all 5 of them. Because sometimes the best way to find out what's really happening in the ranks is to become invisible, to be someone no one notices, no one respects, no one thinks is worth watching. You'd be amazed what people say in front of someone they've dismissed as irrelevant. The sound of vehicles pulling up outside made everyone turn toward the door, but instead of the base security they had expected, the door opened to reveal something far more shocking. 3 men entered, all in civilian clothes, but carrying themselves with the unmistakable bearing of senior military officers. The one in the lead was someone Jake recognized from photographs, Admiral Marcus Stone, commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. The entire bar went silent. Even the civilians recognized that something significant was happening. Admiral Stone's eyes swept the room once, taking in the scene, before settling on the woman at the bar. Admiral Reeves, he said formally, I apologize for the interruption, ma'am, but we have a situation. The woman, Admiral Reeves, set down her bourbon glass for what would be the last time that evening. I assume this is about the package? Yes, ma'am. It's been moved ahead of schedule. We need you at the command center immediately. She stood up, and the 5 young SEALs unconsciously stepped back, giving her space. As she moved to leave, she paused in front of Jake. Mr. Morrison, you asked me to remove my uniform. Technically, you just ordered a United States Navy admiral to strip in a public venue. That's conduct unbecoming at minimum, possibly assault given that you laid hands on me. Jake's face had gone from white to green, the full implications of what had happened finally hitting him. Ma'am, I didn't know. I'm sorry. Admiral Reeves held up a hand, silencing him. I know you didn't know. That's the point. You saw a middle-aged woman in an old uniform and made assumptions. You let your ego and your recent accomplishment cloud your judgment. You forgot one of the fundamental rules of special operations. The most dangerous person in the room is often the one who looks the least threatening. The truth is about to explode, and you don't want to miss a second. Like this video if you're feeling that anticipation building. Your likes tell us you want more military stories with unexpected twists. Smash that like button, because the reveal coming next will leave you absolutely speechless. She turned to address all five of them, and her voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded in the most difficult circumstances imaginable. You've all completed one of the most challenging training programs in the world. You've earned the right to call yourselves SEALs, but that trident on your chest isn't a license to bully, to intimidate, or to judge. It's a responsibility to be better, to be examples of what American military service represents. Rodriguez found his voice, though it shook slightly. Ma'am, what's going to happen to us? Admiral Reeves looked at him with those amber eyes, and for a moment, Rodriguez saw the weight of command, the burden of decisions that had cost lives and saved nations. That depends entirely on what you do in the next few minutes, Petty Officer Rodriguez. Admiral Stone stepped forward. Admiral Reeves, we really do need to go. The situation is escalating. She nodded but didn't move yet. Instead, she looked at Master Chief Williams. Master Chief, these 5 young men are now under your direct supervision for remedial training. I want a full report on my desk by 0800 Monday morning, detailing their progress and understanding what it truly means to wear that trident. Williams snapped to attention. Yes, ma'am. It will be done. The woman looked back at the 5 young SEALs, who were now standing in a rough approximation of attention, their earlier arrogance completely shattered. You want to know what's going to happen to you? You're going to learn. You're going to train. And you're going to understand that being a SEAL isn't about being the toughest person in the bar. It's about being the kind of warrior who protects those who can't protect themselves, who serves with honor even when no one is watching, who shows respect to everyone until they prove they don't deserve it. Chen, in a moment of either bravery or stupidity, raised his hand slightly. Ma'am, can I ask, why didn't you just tell us who you were from the beginning? Admiral Reeves actually smiled at that, though it was a sad smile. Because, Petty Officer Chen, I've been doing this for 6 months, visiting bars, clubs, gathering places near bases all along the coast, listening to conversations, watching behaviors, identifying problems in our special operations community that don't show up in official reports. Tonight was supposed to be my last night before submitting my findings. And we ruined it, Thompson said, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. No, Admiral Reeves corrected. You became part of it. You see, one of the biggest issues I've identified is exactly what happened here tonight. Young operators, fresh from training, thinking that their new status makes them superior to everyone else. Forgetting that the whole point of our service is to protect American citizens, all of them, regardless of what they look like or what we think of them. She pulled out the challenge coin again, this time handing it to Jake. Hold on to this, Mr. Morrison. Let it remind you that you never really know who you're talking to, what they've been through, or what they're capable of. And maybe next time you see someone you think doesn't belong, you'll remember this night and think twice. Jake took the coin with shaking hands, staring at it as if it might burn him. The ghost image on the back seemed to stare back at him, a reminder of how badly he'd miscalculated. Admiral Stone cleared his throat. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we really cannot delay any longer. The package is in motion, and we have a narrow window. Admiral Reeves nodded and started toward the door, but then paused and turned back one more time. Oh, and gentlemen, the drug ring operating out of the base that I've been investigating, 3 of its members were in this bar tonight, watching your little display. They left about 10 minutes ago, probably to warn the others that their operation might be compromised. So, congratulations, you have managed to ruin 6 months of undercover work in one evening. The silence that followed her words was deafening. Jake looked like he might vomit. Rodriguez was visibly shaking. Peterson had his head in his hands. Thompson was staring at the floor, as if hoping it would open up and swallow him. Chen looked like he might cry. Master Chief Williams stepped forward. Admiral, if I may, these boys screwed up, no question, but they're young and they're trainable. Give me 3 weeks with them. Let me show them what real service looks like. I promise you, they'll be different men by the time I'm done." Admiral Reeves studied Williams for a long moment. "You served under Captain Harrison in Afghanistan, didn't you?" "Yes, ma'am. 3 tours." "He was a good man, spoke highly of you." She considered for another moment. 3 weeks, Master Chief, but I want daily reports. And if any of them give you trouble, if any of them show even a hint of the arrogance I saw tonight, they're out. Not just from the teams, but from the Navy entirely. Understood?" "Crystal clear, ma'am." She nodded and finally headed for the door. As she reached it, she called back without turning around. "And Master Chief, make sure they understand that the uniform doesn't make the warrior. The warrior makes the uniform worth wearing." The door closed behind her, and Admiral Stone's entourage, leaving the bar in stunned silence. 53 people had witnessed something extraordinary, something that would become legend in military bars across the country within days. But for now, they all stood or sat in shocked silence, processing what they'd seen. Sam the bartender was the first to speak. "Well, I'll be damned. Served that woman bourbon for 6 months. Never knew I was pouring drinks for a living legend." Master Chief Williams turned to the 5 young SEALs, and his expression was anything but sympathetic. "You heard the Admiral. You belong to me for the next 3 weeks. And boys, I promise you, by the time I'm done with you, you'll either be the SEALs you're supposed to be, or you'll be civilians wondering where it all went wrong. Now, all of you, phones on the bar. You're going dark for the next 24 hours while we figure out how badly you've compromised an ongoing operation." As the 5 men reluctantly placed their phones on the bar, Jake finally found his voice. "Master Chief, how do we make this right?" Williams looked at him with eyes that had seen too much war and not enough peace. "You start by understanding that you just insulted and assaulted one of the most decorated special operations officers in United States history. A woman who has more confirmed kills than your entire training class combined. A woman who planned and led operations that you've only read about in classified briefings. A woman who gave up any chance at a normal life to serve her country in ways you can't even imagine." He paused, letting that sink in. "Admiral Sarah Reeves, call sign Ghost 7, is the reason 300 American soldiers made it home from what should have been a massacre in Kandahar. She's the reason a terrorist cell in Yemen never got to use the chemical weapons they had acquired. She's the reason the President of the United States can sleep at night knowing that there are people like her standing watch." Rodriguez raised his hand tentatively. "Master Chief, why haven't we heard of her? I mean, if she's that important, that decorated, why isn't she famous?" Williams actually laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Because, son, the best operators are the ones you never hear about. The ones who do their job and disappear back into the shadows. The ones who don't need glory or recognition, just the knowledge that they've made the world a little bit safer. That's what you're supposed to be. Not Instagram warriors showing off your muscles and your tridents, but quiet professionals who let their actions speak for them." Thompson, who had been silent since the Admiral left, suddenly spoke up. "The drug ring she mentioned. If we compromised her operation, people could die. Drugs could make it onto the street that she was trying to stop." Williams nodded grimly. "Now you're beginning to understand the real consequences of your actions tonight. This wasn't just about disrespecting a senior officer. This was about potentially destroying months of careful work that could have saved lives. Justice has been served, but the story isn't over. Click the next video on your screen to watch another incredible military revelation. These brave women deserve their stories told. Subscribe if you haven't already. We post new military justice stories every week that will restore your faith in karma." The bar had slowly returned to life around them, conversations resuming in hushed, awed tones. Several patrons approached Sam to pay their tabs, many leaving larger tips than usual, as if trying to make up for what they had witnessed. The 2 contractors at the pool table had started a new game, but their hearts weren't in it. The Marine wives had put their phones away, recognizing that some moments were too significant to be reduced to social media posts. One of them, a woman in her 40s with the bearing of someone who'd been a military spouse for decades, approached the group of SEALs. "My husband is a Marine Corps colonel," she said quietly. "He's told me stories about Ghost 7. Never knew it was a woman, but he said whoever it was saved his unit twice in Iraq. You boys have no idea how lucky you are that she showed mercy tonight. From what I've heard, she could have ended all 5 of your careers with one phone call. Jake looked at the challenge coin in his hand, the weight of it seeming to increase with every revelation about the woman who'd given it to him. "We're going to make this right," he said, though whether he was talking to the woman, Master Chief Williams, or himself wasn't clear. Williams gathered the 5 phones from the bar and pocketed them. "You'll get these back when I decide you've earned them. For now, you're going to learn what it really means to be a SEAL. And your first lesson starts right now. You're going to clean this bar top to bottom. Every glass, every table, every inch of floor. Sam here is going to supervise. And if he's not satisfied, you'll do it again." Sam nodded appreciatively. "Place could use a good deep clean. Haven't had proper help since my regular guy joined up 6 months ago." Peterson, his analytical mind still processing everything that had happened, asked, "Master Chief, do you think she knew this would happen? I mean, did she come here specifically tonight knowing we'd be here, knowing we'd confront her?" Williams considered the question. "With Admiral Reeves, anything's possible. She's been playing chess while the rest of us are playing checkers for as long as I've known of her. Maybe she knew you'd be here. Maybe she profiled you, figured out exactly how you'd react, and used it as a teaching moment. Or maybe you just got incredibly unlucky and picked the wrong person on the wrong night." "Either way," Jake said, looking around at his teammates, "we learned something tonight, something we should have already known." "And what's that?" Williams asked. Jake looked down at the challenge coin again, then back up at the Master Chief. "That the uniform doesn't make you worthy of respect. Your actions do. And tonight, our actions were disgraceful." Williams nodded slowly. "That's a start, Morrison. It's a start. Now, get to work. This bar isn't going to clean itself, and you've got a lot to make up for." As the 5 SEALs began their punishment, starting with clearing tables and collecting glasses, the JAG officer in the corner pulled up the military justice database on her tablet, accessing thousands of precedent cases through the new AI-powered legal research platform. This technology was transforming military law education, allowing service members to understand their rights, access free legal courses, and connect with pro bono attorneys specializing in military cases. The platform's machine learning could predict case outcomes with 87% accuracy, revolutionizing how military legal education was delivered. She was already composing a report about what she'd witnessed, knowing it would become part of the training curriculum for future officers. Outside Murphy's bar, 3 black SUVs were pulling away, carrying Admiral Sarah Reeves toward whatever crisis required the attention of Ghost 7. Inside the vehicles, secure communications were already flowing, operations being planned, and decisions being made that would affect national security in ways the 5 young SEALs could never imagine. Back in the bar, as Jake Morrison wiped down tables under Sam's watchful eye, he couldn't stop thinking about those amber eyes and the weight they'd carried. He thought about the scars hidden under makeup, the injuries that caused the slight limp, the tinnitus from too many breaches. He thought about 37 consecutive missions without a friendly casualty, about making decisions that cost lives to save others, about carrying secrets that could never be told. And for the first time since he'd earned his trident, Jake Morrison understood that being a SEAL wasn't about being the toughest person in the room. It was about being willing to carry that weight, to make those decisions, to serve in silence and disappear into the shadows when the mission was done. The challenge coin sat heavy in his pocket, a constant reminder of the night he'd learned what real strength looked like. It looked nothing like what he'd expected. It looked like a middle-aged woman in a worn uniform, sitting alone at a bar, nursing a bourbon while she protected a nation that would never know her name. Master Chief Williams watched the 5 young men work, seeing the beginning of understanding in their movements, the first cracks in their armor of arrogance. 3 weeks might not be enough to completely reshape them, but it would be a start. And sometimes, a start was all you needed. The night wore on, and Murphy's bar slowly emptied of patrons, each carrying with them the story of what they'd witnessed. By morning, the legend of the confrontation would have spread throughout the base, growing and changing with each telling. But the truth of it, the real lesson of it, would remain with 5 young SEALs who'd learned that heroes don't always look like what you expect. As Rodriguez mopped the floor near where Admiral Reeves had sat, he noticed something on the ground, a small pin that must have fallen from her uniform. He picked it up and examined it closely. It wasn't a standard military insignia. Instead, it was a small ghost, barely visible unless you looked directly at it, with the number 7 worked into the design so subtly you might miss it if you didn't know to look. He showed it to Master Chief Williams, who took it with something approaching reverence. "This is from the original Ghost 7 unit," he said quietly. "There were only 7 of these ever made, one for each member of the most classified SEAL team in history." "What happened to them?" Thompson asked, pausing in his cleaning to listen. Williams was quiet for a long moment. 6 of them died in an operation that officially never happened. Admiral Reeves was the only survivor. She carries their ghosts with her, literally and figuratively. That's why she's Ghost 7, not just because it was her number, but because she carries all 7 of them forward. The weight of that revelation settled over the group like a heavy blanket. Suddenly, the worn uniform, the slight limp, the 1,000-yard stare made sense. This wasn't just a highly decorated officer they had insulted. This was someone who had paid a price for her service that they couldn't even comprehend. Jake took the pin from Williams and studied it. "We need to return this to her." Williams shook his head. "She doesn't lose things by accident, Morrison. If that pin is here, it's because she meant for it to be found. The question is, what are you going to do with it?" The 5 SEALs exchanged glances, a wordless communication passing between them. They'd entered this bar as arrogant young operators, convinced of their own superiority. They would leave it as humbled men who'd been given a second chance they didn't deserve. The pin felt impossibly heavy in Jake's hand as he stared at the tiny ghost worked into the metal. 7 souls condensed into a piece of metal no bigger than a dime, and one woman carrying their memory forward through every mission, every decision, every sleepless night. He carefully placed it on the bar, positioning it where Admiral Reeves had sat, like a shrine to a moment that had shattered everything he thought he knew about strength. "Master Chief," Peterson said quietly, wringing out his mop. "Those 6 others from Ghost 7, how did they die?" Williams picked up a glass, examining it for spots before setting it back on the shelf. "That's classified so far beyond your pay grade that even asking about it could end your career. But I'll tell you this much. They died saving 300 American soldiers from walking into an ambush that would have been the worst military disaster since Vietnam. Admiral Reeves was the only one who made it out, and she did it carrying 2 wounded soldiers on her back for 6 miles through hostile territory." Rodriguez stopped mopping mid-stroke. 6 miles? With 2 wounded soldiers? In 120-degree heat, with a collapsed lung and 17 pieces of shrapnel in her body, Williams added. The medics said she should have been dead 3 times over, but she didn't stop moving until she got those soldiers to the extraction point. Then she collapsed and flatlined twice in the helicopter. They brought her back both times, obviously, but the damage was done. "That slight limp you noticed? That's from the reconstructive surgery on her hip and knee. The rasp in her voice? Smoke inhalation from the burning vehicle she pulled those soldiers from." Thompson set down the chairs he'd been stacking, his face pale. "And we grabbed her. We threatened her. You acted like every other group of young, arrogant operators I've seen in the last decade," Williams cut him off. "The difference is, you got your wake-up call from someone who could have destroyed you, but chose to teach you instead. Most aren't that lucky." Sam returned from the back room with a fresh case of bourbon, setting it on the bar with practiced ease. "You know, she never ordered the expensive stuff until tonight. 6 months of coming in here, she always went for the well bourbon. Tonight, she ordered Eagle Rare." "Why tonight?" Chen asked, genuinely curious despite his shame. Sam shrugged. Maybe she knew her cover was about to be blown anyway. Maybe she wanted one good drink before heading into whatever situation called her away. Or maybe she just figured she'd earned it after dealing with U5. The front door opened, causing all of them to tense. But it was just one of the Marine wives returning. She'd forgotten her jacket in the confusion. As she retrieved it, she paused by the group of cleaning SEALs. "My daughter wants to be a SEAL," she said quietly. "She's 17, top of her class in everything, natural athlete. I've been trying to talk her out of it, telling her it's not possible, that the program isn't really open to women despite what they say." She looked at each of them in turn. "After tonight, I'm going to tell her about Admiral Reeves. I'm going to tell her that if she's willing to work harder than everyone else, to prove herself every single day, to carry the weight of being first and best, and never complaining about it, then maybe she can follow in those footsteps." Jake found his voice. "Ma'am, after what we've learned tonight, if your daughter has even half the strength of Admiral Reeves, the teams would be lucky to have her." The woman nodded and left, but her words hung in the air. How many young women had been told it was impossible? How many had given up on their dreams because they didn't know about Ghost 7, about Admiral Sarah Reeves, about the woman who'd paved a path through blood and sacrifice that others could now follow. Master Chief Williams's phone buzzed with an encrypted message. He read it, his expression growing more serious with each word. The situation Admiral Reeves was called away for. It's related to the drug ring she was investigating. The package they mentioned is a shipment of fentanyl-laced heroin that was supposed to come through the base in 3 days. Someone tipped off the suppliers that they were compromised, and they moved the timeline up to tonight. Because of us, Rodriguez said, the weight of responsibility crushing. Because we made a scene and drew attention, Williams nodded grimly. Your little stunt didn't just compromise her cover, it set off a chain reaction. The 3 suspects who left the bar made calls. Those calls triggered other calls. Within 15 minutes, an entire network knew something was wrong. Now, instead of a controlled takedown with minimal risk, Admiral Reeves has to coordinate an emergency operation with whatever resources she can scramble. Peterson's analytical mind was working through the implications. If that shipment makes it through, it hits the streets. People die. Kids die. Now you're starting to understand the real cost of your arrogance, Williams said. This isn't about hurt feelings or damaged pride. This is about real consequences in the real world. Every action you take in this uniform has ripple effects you can't even imagine. Chen, who had been silent for a while, suddenly spoke up. Master Chief, is there anything we can do to help? I mean, we caused this mess. There has to be something we can do to fix it. Williams considered this. You want to help? Fine. Peterson, you're supposed to be the tech specialist. Get on your laptop and pull up everything you can about unusual shipping manifests coming through the base in the next 6 hours. Rodriguez, you know the docks better than anyone. Think about which berths could handle a quick, quiet transfer. Morrison, you've got contacts in base security from your training rotation. Make some discreet calls, find out if anyone's noticed anything unusual tonight. The 5 SEALs immediately went to work, their earlier shame transforming into focused determination. This was something they understood. Mission planning, intelligence gathering, tactical assessment. For the first time all night, they were operating like the elite operators they'd been trained to be. As Peterson's fingers flew over his keyboard, his eyes widened. Master Chief, I've got something. A container ship, the Osaka Dream, filed an emergency docking request 45 minutes ago. Claim mechanical problems, but their transit logs show no distress signals, no reduction in speed until they were within sight of the harbor. Rodriguez looked up from the map he'd sketched on a napkin. Berth 7 would be perfect for them. It's isolated, minimal security camera coverage, and there's direct truck access to the interstate. Jake ended his phone call. The base security says they were ordered to reduce patrols on the north side of the docks tonight. Order came from high up, but nobody questioned it because it coincided with a training exercise on the south side. Williams immediately pulled out his phone and dialed a number from memory. This is Master Chief Williams, authentication code Tango 779er. I need to speak to Admiral Reeves immediately. Yes, I'll hold. The bar fell silent, except for the distant sound of waves and the hum of the refrigerators. After what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds, Williams straightened. Admiral, Master Chief Williams, ma'am, the 5 SEALs from tonight have intel you need to hear. He put the phone on speaker and set it on the bar. Admiral Reeves's voice came through, calm, despite what must have been chaos on her end. Master Chief, I'm a little busy at the moment. Ma'am, they have identified the Osaka Dream at berth 7, emergency docking 45 minutes ago, and base security has been redirected away from that area. There was a pause, then the sound of rapid orders being given in the background. How did they come by this information? Jake leaned toward the phone. Ma'am, Admiral, this is Petty Officer Morrison. We wanted to try to fix what we broke. Peterson found the shipping anomaly, Rodriguez knows the docks, and I have a contact in base security. We put it together and... You put together in 15 minutes what my team has been trying to locate for the last hour, Admiral Reeves interrupted, and there was something that might have been approval in her voice. Master Chief, can those 5 be ready for operational deployment in 20 minutes? Williams looked at that then 5 young men, seeing the desperate hope in their eyes. They're already ready, Admiral. Then gear them up. Basic loadout only, suppressors mandatory. They're not going in with the primary team, but I need bodies for perimeter security and to cut off escape routes. Master Chief, you're in tactical command of them. Try not to let them get themselves killed. Yes, ma'am. We'll be at Rally Point Alpha in 15 minutes. The line went dead, and suddenly the night had shifted from punishment to potential redemption. The 5 SEALs looked at each other, then at Williams, barely able to believe what had just happened. "You heard the Admiral," Williams barked. "Move! Morrison, transportation. Chen, weapons from the armory. Peterson, comms equipment. Rodriguez, tactical gear. Thompson, medical supplies. You have 5 minutes to get what we need and get back here. Go." They scattered like a frag grenade had been thrown, each racing to gather their assigned equipment. Sam watched them go, then looked at Williams. "You really think they're ready for this?" Williams picked up the ghost pin from the bar, studying it in the light. "They're about to find out what real operational pressure feels like. Either they'll rise to it, or they'll fold. Either way, they'll learn something." Within 4 minutes, all 5 were back, carrying gear bags and weapons cases. They suited up with the efficiency of their training, checking each other's equipment, running through communications protocols, establishing fields of fire, and rules of engagement. The arrogant boys who had strutted into the bar 3 hours ago were gone, replaced by focused operators preparing for a mission. Williams did a final check of their equipment, then nodded. "Remember, we're support only. We secure the perimeter, prevent escape, and only engage if engaged. This is Admiral Reeves's operation. We do exactly what she says, when she says it, without question or hesitation. Clear?" "Clear, Master Chief," they responded in unison. As they loaded into Jake's truck, Peterson asked, "Master Chief, why is she giving us this chance, after what we did?" Williams checked the magazine in his MK-18 rifle. "Because she knows that the best lessons are learned under fire. And because, despite your stupidity tonight, you're still trained operators, and she needs every asset she can get. But make no mistake, this is your one chance at redemption. Screw this up, and you won't get another." The ride to the rally point was silent, except for the sound of equipment checks and the click of magazines being seated. Each man was lost in his own thoughts, processing how quickly the night had turned from embarrassment to opportunity, from shame to potential redemption. They arrived at Rally Point Alpha, a warehouse on the north side of the docks, to find organized chaos. 3 tactical teams were already staged, operators checking weapons and reviewing architectural plans of the ship. Admiral Reeves stood at a makeshift command post, now in full tactical gear that somehow made her look even more formidable than she had in the bar. She looked up as Williams's team approached, her amber eyes assessing each of them in turn. "Master Chief, your team takes the north perimeter. There are 3 possible escape routes, 2 vehicle, 1 on foot. I want them all covered. Rules of engagement are return fire only unless you see someone attempting to destroy evidence. The drugs are important, but the intel on this network is critical. We need prisoners, not bodies." "Understood, Admiral," Williams replied. As they moved to take their positions, Admiral Reeves called out, "Morrison." Jake turned back. "Ma'am, you still have my coin?" He pulled it from his pocket, where he had transferred it when he changed into tactical gear. "Yes, ma'am." "Good, hold on to it. When this is over, we're going to have a conversation about what it means to carry something like that." Before Jake could respond, she had turned back to the command post, issuing rapid orders to the other teams. He rejoined his squad, taking his position covering the northern vehicle exit. The next 2 hours were a masterclass in tactical operations. They watched as Admiral Reeves coordinated 3 teams with the precision of a conductor leading an orchestra. Every movement was calculated, every approach angle considered, every contingency planned for. When the assault began, it was over in less than 90 seconds. No shots fired from the tactical teams, though several suspects attempted to flee. That's when Jake's team proved their worth. A van burst from a hidden loading dock, trying to ram through their position. Jake and Rodriguez disabled the vehicle with precise shots to the engine block and tires, while Peterson and Chen moved in to secure the occupants. Thompson provided medical aid to 1 suspect who'd been injured in the crash, probably saving his life. When the operation was complete, 17 suspects were in custody, including 2 high-value targets that had been on federal watch lists for years. The drug shipment, nearly 300 kilograms of fentanyl-laced heroin, was secured before it could hit the streets. Admiral Reeves approached their position as the scene was being processed. "Master Chief, your team performed well. Professional, restrained, effective." She looked at each of the 5 SEALs. "This is what you're supposed to be, not barroom bullies, but precision instruments of national security." Rodriguez found the courage to speak. "Ma'am, we're sorry about tonight. about the bar, about compromising your operation, about everything. Admiral Reeves studied him for a moment. Petty Officer Rodriguez, do you know what the difference is between a mistake and a failure? No, ma'am. A mistake is something you learn from. A failure is something you repeat. Tonight at the bar, you made a mistake, a serious one, but a mistake nonetheless. What you do with that lesson determines whether you're failures or whether you're the SEALs the Navy needs you to be. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and gentlemen, the 3 weeks of training with Master Chief Williams stands. This doesn't erase what happened tonight. It just proves you might be worth salvaging. As she walked away to coordinate the evidence processing, Chen quietly asked, did anyone else notice she never raised her voice once during the entire operation? Even when that one team almost compromised their position, she just calmly redirected them. Thompson nodded. Complete control. No ego, no showing off, just pure tactical efficiency. That's what 20 years of real operations looks like, Williams said. While you boys were learning to be SEALs in training, she was being a SEAL in places where mistakes meant flag-draped coffins. Remember that the next time you think your trident makes you special. The sun was beginning to rise over San Diego Bay as the operation wrapped up. The 5 SEALs helped load evidence and secure the scene, working alongside the other tactical teams who treated them with professional courtesy but clear distance. Word had already spread about the confrontation at Murphy's, and none of the other operators were particularly sympathetic. As they prepared to leave, one of the older operators, a senior chief with multiple deployment patches, approached Jake. Heard you grabbed Admiral Reeves and demanded she strip. Jake's face flushed with shame. I didn't know who she was. That's not the point, and you know it, the senior chief replied. The point is, you thought your trident gave you the right to humiliate someone you perceived as weak. That's not what we're about. That's never been what we're about. Before Jake could respond, the senior chief walked away, leaving him standing alone with the weight of his actions. The challenge coin in his pocket seemed to burn through the fabric, a constant reminder of how badly he'd misread the situation. Master Chief Williams gathered his team for the ride back to base. As they loaded their gear, Admiral Reeves appeared one last time. She was on her encrypted phone again, but she ended the call as they approached. Master Chief, I've spoken to Admiral Stone. Your temporary assignment to remedial training is approved. These 5 are yours for the next 3 weeks. Do what you need to do to make them worthy of those tridents or process their separation papers. Williams nodded. Understood, Admiral. If I may ask, what about the rest of your investigation? The 6 months of undercover work? For the first time since they had met her, Admiral Reeves looked genuinely tired. The weight of command, of secrets, of sacrifice showed in the lines of her face and the set of her shoulders. The investigation continues. This was just one piece of a larger puzzle. There are still problems in our special operations community that need addressing. Too many young operators who think the trident is a crown instead of a responsibility. Too many incidents of misconduct being swept under the rug because boys will be boys. Too many good people leaving the service because they don't feel valued or respected. She looked directly at the 5 young SEALs. You 5 are going to be part of the solution. Master Chief Williams is going to reshape you, and then you're going to help reshape the culture. Every time you see another operator acting like you did tonight, you're going to remember this moment and intervene. You're going to be the example of what right looks like. Peterson raised his hand slightly. Ma'am, what if we're not strong enough? What if we can't change things? Admiral Reeves smiled, that same sad smile from the bar. Petty Officer Peterson, do you know what my first commanding officer told me when I said I wanted to try out for the SEALs? No, ma'am. He said it was impossible, that I was too small, too weak, too female. He said I'd wash out in the first week, that I'd embarrass myself and the Navy by even trying. Do you know what I told him? The 5 SEALs leaned in, waiting. Nothing. I didn't say a word. I just went and did it. And when I graduated, when I became the first woman to earn that trident, I didn't go back and rub it in his face. I just kept working, kept proving myself, kept pushing forward until my actions spoke so loudly that no words were necessary. She paused, looking at each of them. That's what you're going to do. Stop talking about being SEALs and start being SEALs. The real kind, not the Instagram version. Her phone rang again, and she looked at the screen with a frown. Ghost 7, authentication confirmed, she said into the phone. After listening for a moment, her expression grew even more serious. Understood. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She ended the call and looked at Master Chief Williams. Another situation requiring immediate attention. Master Chief, you have your orders regarding these 5. As she turned to leave, Jake called out, Admiral, wait! She paused, looking back. Jake pulled the challenge coin from his pocket and held it out. This belongs to you, ma'am. Admiral Reeves walked back and looked at the coin in his hand, then up at his face. No, Petty Officer Morrison, it belongs to you now. That coin represents a promise, from you to me, from you to the Navy, and from you to yourself. A promise to be better, to do better, to represent what that trident is supposed to mean. She closed his fingers around the coin. Carry it. Let it remind you that strength isn't about size or gender or how many push-ups you can do. It's about standing up for what's right, even when you are standing alone. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. It's about service before self. Always. With that, she walked to a waiting black SUV and got in. As it pulled away, the 5 SEALs stood at attention and saluted, holding it until the vehicle disappeared around a corner. Master Chief Williams broke the silence. All right, ladies, playtime's over. You've got 2 hours to get your affairs in order, then report to Training Facility 7. Bring water, bring motivation, and bring a change of clothes. You're going to need all 3. As they drove back to base, Thompson asked, Master Chief, do you think we'll ever see her again? Williams considered the question. Admiral Reeves operates in a world most people don't even know exists. She could be in the same room with you, and you'd never know it unless she wanted you to. But I'll tell you this, she'll be watching. Maybe not directly, but through reports, through the grapevine, through the mysterious ways that information flows in the special operations community. She gave you a second chance tonight. Don't waste it. Rodriguez was looking out of the window at the sunrise painting the ocean gold and orange. You know what the worst part is? If we hadn't been such jerks, if we'd just minded our own business, or even just been polite, we might have spent the evening having drinks with a living legend and never known it. But then you wouldn't have learned anything, Williams countered. Sometimes the worst nights of your life turn out to be the most important. Sometimes you need to fall flat on your face to learn how to stand properly. Jake was turning the challenge coin over in his fingers, feeling the weight of it, the responsibility it represented. Master Chief, that thing about Ghost 7, about her being the only survivor, how does someone live with that? Williams was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. You don't live with it, Morrison. You live in spite of it. You carry your dead with you, honor them with your actions, and try to be worthy of the sacrifice they made. Every mission Admiral Reeves completes, every life she saves, every threat she neutralizes, that's her honoring her fallen teammates. That's her proving that their deaths meant something. The truck fell silent after that, each man lost in his own thoughts as they processed the night's events. They had started the evening as arrogant young operators, convinced of their own superiority. They were ending it as humbled men who'd been given a glimpse into what real service, real sacrifice, and real strength looked like. As they pulled into the base, Chen suddenly spoke up. You know what? My little sister wants to join the Navy. I've been telling her to aim for intelligence or communications, something safe. But after tonight, after seeing Admiral Reeves, I'm going to tell her to aim for whatever she wants. If a woman can become Ghost 7, can carry that weight and still stand tall, then my sister can do anything she sets her mind to. Peterson nodded. I've got a daughter. She's only 3, but someday she's going to ask me about my service, about what it means to be a SEAL. I'm going to tell her about tonight, about how I learned that real strength doesn't look like what you expect, and that the most dangerous person in the room might be the quietest one. They pulled up to the barracks, and as they got out, Master Chief Williams stopped them. One more thing. What happened tonight, the details of the operation, Admiral Reeves's identity, all of that is classified. You can talk about the lesson you learned at Murphy's, about being put in your place by someone you underestimated, but the specifics stay between us. Ghost 7's identity is need to know, and most people don't need to know. Understood, Master Chief, they replied in unison. As they separated to prepare for their training, Jake remained behind for a moment. Master Chief, that pin we found, the ghost pin, what should we do with it? Williams pulled it from his pocket and looked at it in the morning light. I'll return it through channels, but something tells me Admiral Reeves meant for us to find it, meant for it to be part of the lesson. Everything she does has purpose, even the things that seem accidental. 3 weeks later, after the most grueling training any of them had ever experienced, the 5 SEALs stood at attention in a nondescript office on base. Master Chief Williams had pushed them beyond their limits, broken them down, and rebuilt them into something better. They had learned not just tactical skills, but humility, respect, and what service really meant. On the desk in front of them was a simple manila envelope addressed to the Murphys 5, a nickname that had stuck despite their best efforts to shake it. Williams opened it and read the single page inside. "Gentlemen," he read, "I've been following your progress through Master Chief Williams's reports. You've shown dedication, humility, and a genuine desire to improve. The Navy needs operators who have learned from their mistakes, who understand that strength comes in many forms, and who will help build a culture of respect and professionalism in our Special Operations Forces. You've earned the right to continue wearing those tridents. Don't make me regret this decision. Ghost 7. Below the typed message was a handwritten note. P.S. The next time you see someone you think doesn't belong, remember Murphy's bar. Remember that assumptions are the enemy of good intelligence. And remember that the person you're looking at might be the one who saves your life someday. S.R. Jake felt the challenge coin in his pocket, where it had lived for the past 3 weeks. It had become his talisman, his reminder, his promise to be better. Master Chief, will we ever get to thank her properly? Williams folded the letter carefully. You thank her by being the SEALs she believes you can be, by treating everyone with respect until they prove they don't deserve it, by remembering that the uniform doesn't make you special, your actions do. 6 months later, Jake Morrison was leading a training exercise for new SEAL candidates when he noticed one of them hassling a female sailor at the base exchange. Without hesitation, he intervened, pulling the candidate aside. "Let me tell you a story," he said, fingering the challenge coin in his pocket, "about a night at Murphy's bar, and the most important lesson I ever learned about what it really means to be a SEAL." The legend of Ghost 7 lived on, not in official records or public recognition, but in the quiet stories passed between operators, in the lessons learned by those lucky enough to cross her path, and in the culture slowly changing within the Special Operations community. Admiral Sarah Reeves continued to operate in the shadows, appearing where needed, fixing problems others didn't even know existed, and occasionally reminding young operators that real strength doesn't always look like what you expect. And somewhere in San Diego, Murphy's Bar still serves bourbon to sailors and SEALs, its walls holding the secret of the night when 5 young men learned that heroes don't always wear capes or muscles or even recognition. Sometimes they wear old uniforms and drink bourbon alone, carrying the weight of fallen comrades and impossible decisions, standing watch in the darkness so others can sleep peacefully in the light. Sam the bartender kept that table in the corner reserved every Friday night, just in case she ever came back. Next to the register, barely visible unless you knew where to look, he'd mounted a small brass plaque. It read simply, "Respect is earned by actions, not uniforms." And every SEAL who'd heard the story knew exactly what it meant. The package that had called Admiral Reeves away that night turned out to be more than just drugs. Hidden within the shipment were encrypted drives containing intelligence on a terrorist network, planning attacks on military bases across the Pacific. The emergency operation had prevented not just overdoses on the street, but potentially hundreds of military casualties. The Murphys 5, as they were now known throughout the SEAL community, had inadvertently helped save lives they would never know about. But that's the nature of special operations, of real service. The greatest victories are often invisible, the true heroes unknown, and the most important battles fought in silence. Admiral Sarah Reeves, Ghost 7, embodied all of this. She was proof that strength isn't measured in size or volume, but in the willingness to stand when others would fall, to serve when others would quit, and to carry the weight of decisions that would break lesser people. As Jake Morrison looked at the new candidates, seeing their cockiness and remembering his own, he smiled slightly. They would learn just as he had learned. Some would learn the easy way, through training and mentorship. Others would need their own Murphy's Bar moment, their own collision with someone who would shatter their assumptions and rebuild them into something better. The challenge coin caught the light as he pulled it out, its weight familiar now, comforting even. The Ghost and the 7 were no longer symbols of shame, but of redemption, of the night he'd been broken down and given the chance to build himself back up properly. "Listen closely," he told the candidates, "because what I'm about to tell you might save your career, your reputation, and maybe even your soul." It starts with 5 young SEALs who thought they knew what strength looked like, and 1 woman who proved them wrong. The story would be told and retold, growing and changing with each telling, but the core truth would remain, that real warriors don't need to prove their strength, that true power often whispers instead of shouts, and that the most dangerous person in the room might be the one you'd never suspect. And somewhere, in an office whose location was classified, behind a door marked only with a number, Admiral Sarah Reeves read the report on the Murphy's Five's progress with something approaching satisfaction. They'd learned, they'd grown, they'd become the SEALs she'd known they could be. She opened her desk drawer and pulled out 6 identical ghost pins, each one representing a fallen teammate, a ghost she carried with her every day. Beside them, she placed a 7th pin, the one that had been lost at Murphy's bar and returned through channels. 7 ghosts, 7 reminders of the price of service, 7 reasons to keep fighting, even when the war seemed endless. Her secure phone rang, displaying another crisis, another threat, another mission that officially wouldn't exist. She answered it with the same calm professionalism she'd shown for 20 years. Ghost 7, yes sir, I'll be there in 20 minutes. She stood, straightened her uniform, a newer one now, though still deliberately unremarkable, and headed for the door. There was work to be done, threats to neutralize and lives to save, and maybe, if she was lucky, a few more young operators to humble and reshape along the way. The war in the shadows never ended, but neither did her watch. Ghost 7 moved through the darkness, protecting a nation that would never know her name, carrying her fallen teammates forward with every step.
durch des Himmels prächtigen Land laufen